Yeah, it was interesting that you guys, for the first time, broke down the data center revenue by hyperscalers and then some of the other categories like sovereign and other cloud AI. The hyperscaler number, that's about what, 50% of the data center revenues. There have been questions about how sustainable the growth is there, given just whether these incredible CapEx numbers can continue from the hyperscalers and also the increasing competition from AMD and others. What do you say to those concerns?
The hyperscalers is where the AI frontier models are, and we're gaining share there. We're gaining share there because we've always supported OpenAI and xAI and Meta MSL and Microsoft's AI and a whole bunch of other AI startups. But this year, we had the benefit of also winning Anthropic. We're helping them scale capacity so that they could have more reach, generate more revenues, and grow their company. And so with Anthropic, we're scaling very, very quickly. We've got big plans for them. And so we're gaining share in AI inference. We're gaining share in hyperscale. The second category is a category that you really have to have a complete solution, including CPUs and GPUs and networking and switches and data processing and security processing and the whole software stack, which NVIDIA is quite unique in having. And so the second category, whether it's industrial on-prem with manufacturing or enterprise on-premise, AI native clouds, the CoreWeaves, the Nebiuses, Nscales, so many others, and of course the sovereign AI nations where they want to have their own governance and they want to build themselves. All of these different data centers in the second category, NVIDIA is fairly unique in being able to serve. And that represents half of our business and is also the fastest growing.
I was going to say it's growing a lot faster even than the hyperscaler business. But on that, there are also questions lately, Jensen, about whether these hyperscaler customers, which are so critical, are also becoming competitors. Andy Jassy of Amazon talked on the last call about their chip business, which he said if it was a standalone would be worth $50 billion a year, and sort of hinted that they'd be maybe open to selling chips externally. So is this a threat to your dominance if they start doing it themselves?
We have a lot of competition, but as you know, we're very good at this. And so just because a competitor emerges, the distance, the path, the journey from announcing a chip to eventually building a sustainable business is a long journey. And so we continue to serve all of our hyperscale clouds, and they have projects internally. Many of the projects are delayed, and many projects are canceled, and some of them are sustained. And so I think a lot of it is quite noisy. We don't let it distract us. We only focus on supporting our hyperscale partners, helping the AI model builders grow. And as I mentioned, while competition and the number of announcements is growing, our overall share is growing and growing quite fast. And so we're doing very well.
On the Vera Rubin, I noticed you laid out the Vera Rubin space module at GTC built for orbit. And SpaceX did just release its S1 today, gearing up for this mega IPO. And one of the questions that investors are asking around it is just the feasibility of data centers in space. How realistic is that, and when could it come?
Well, NVIDIA is already in space. Hopper is already in space. Vera Rubin's on its way to space. And so, I think the ability to deploy data centers in space is a known ability. The question is, how do we scale that up? And so there's a fair amount of engineering and a fair amount of science that we still have to do to scale it up. As far as I could see right now, there are no physical limits. There's no laws of physics limitation. There are a lot of technical challenges. Some things are way easier. Some things are way harder, of course. But one of the things that's really terrific is that the amount of energy that we'll have in space is, basically practically infinite. And so I think that that's a very big plus and a really great motivator and a reason to really endeavor to put data centers out in space. But we have 4 or 5 partners working with us in putting satellites out in space.
Is this like a 3-year story, 10-year story? Any sense of it?
Well, we're already there now. And so the question is, we have the ability, we have to do the engineering, and then we have to scale it up. I think for the next 10 years, it's a fairly fair certainty that the vast majority of the world's data centers will be here terrestrially, and so we'll just add with satellites and add with space data centers as we go. And so I don't think it's going to be all or nothing. We're going to rely on Earth for a lot of data centers, a lot of energy for some time to come.
You're also very bullish, obviously, about the Vera Rubin launch, and you confirmed shipping in Q3. Can you just tell us a little bit about how that's going to change the business overall and what the pipeline looks like?
The thing that's really great about Vera Rubin is that it's designed in the same systems architecture as Grace Blackwell, so it's easy for our customers to integrate and adopt. The second thing is, whereas Grace Blackwell was designed for inference, Vera Rubin was designed to run the entire pipeline, the entire processing stack of an agent. Everything from the orchestration of the agent, which usually runs on CPUs, to the inference, the thinking part of the agent, which runs on GPUs, or the tool use that runs on GPUs and CPUs. So the combination, that entire pipeline end to end, from short-term memory that runs on CPUs and GPUs to long-term memory that runs on storage. NVIDIA has an architecture for every aspect of the agentic pipeline. And so whereas Grace Blackwell was for inference, Vera Rubin is for agents. Vera Rubin is, gosh, it's in full production, 7 different chips. It's the most complex computing system the world's ever made. We're going to be very successful with it. Whereas Grace Blackwell, we didn't have the benefit of every frontier AI model supporting it at the get-go. In the case of Vera Rubin, every one of the frontier AI model companies, every one of the hyperscalers, literally every single data center customer in the world is already fully geared up to launch with Vera Rubin. So it's going to be an exciting launch.
What is the barrier to getting this going smoothly? Is the memory shortage impacting you at all when it comes to launching this, or even when it comes to thinking about your next innovation?
Well, as you know, NVIDIA is a very large company, so our supply chain is literally the largest in the world. And we've been planning this for several years. You know, we started planning with the Hopper generation and got more than twice as large with Grace Blackwell, and it's going to get more than twice as large with Vera Rubin. And so we've been planning our supply chain for quite some time. And I think it's fair to say that everything is challenging at the scale that we're working. You know, there's nothing easy about the work that we do. Everything from the copper backplane of our Vera Rubin that we partner with Amphenol to do. This is incredibly complicated copper scale-up system, to silicon photonics, to HBM memories and LPDDR memories and CoWoS of 3 different types. There's CoWoS-S, CoWoS-R, CoWoS-L. The amount of technology that's integrated in Vera Rubin, I could go on, but it's kind of mind-blowing, kind of staggering. And so, but that's what we're good at. You know, we are the largest single company in the world at focused in building this, and we have every single company as a customer. And so, we have a lot of responsibility to really lift the entire AI ecosystem in the coming months.
So do you feel good about the supply chain, but Jensen, do you feel good about the margins, the 75% margins, and the ability to hold those in an environment where costs are going up?
Well, every single generation is a challenge. Our pricing is based on the value that we deliver. And each generation, the value that we deliver is X factors, always an order of magnitude better than the last time. And so we have the ability to deliver great value, and as a result, our pricing and our margins should be able to sustain. And I'm expecting it to sustain.
Okay, back to earth. Question on China. Obviously, you just got back from the trip with the president, and the topic of the H200s came up again, we know, between President Trump and President Xi, and you have approval to sell there to certain companies, but the Chinese government, I guess, hasn't given the green light. What's your expectation around when that could happen? I
don't have any expectation, which is the reason why we put all of our guidance, all of our numbers, all the expectations that I've set with all of our analysts and investors to invest nothing, to expect nothing. And so that's my expectation. The demand in China is quite large, just as the demand for AI is quite significant here. It's quite significant there. They have indigenous companies. Huawei is very, very strong. They had a record year. They'll likely, very likely, have an extraordinary year coming up. And their local ecosystem of chip companies are doing quite well because we've evacuated that market. We've really largely conceded that market to them. And so I think that the Chinese government, I think, has rightfully would like to protect their local companies. And on the other hand, they also would like the world to know that China is an open market. And so somewhere between the desire to protect the local companies, which is understandable, and the desire to open up China for the world to invest in and participate in, which is a very much larger goal, in my opinion. The tension between those two desires ultimately will get worked out over time. In the meantime, we're very clear that we would be more than delighted to serve the market. We have a lot of customers there. We have a lot of partners there. And we've been there for 30 years, and we'd be more than joyed and honored to serve that marketplace. But at the moment, for all of our investors here and all the investors around the world, I would like to ask to expect nothing and let things work out in its own due time.
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, Jensen, you have the #1 AI chip. You've secured the top spot in building out the biggest tech revolution of our lifetime. I am curious how you view the stock performance. Why you think you've underperformed some of the other AI compute stocks and trade at a pretty sizable discount to the S&P 500.
That's one of the mysteries of the universe. But I think that all of this is going to get sorted out. In the end, they can't hold back performance. And at this point, people said, what about competition? I think that they ought to go back and reflect on all of the announcements that were made. How many of them have been canceled? How many of them have been delayed? How many of them, just quietly diminished? And all of those announcements reflect on those as all these press releases and announcements were being made and where we are. I think that we've been very consistent. Every single year, we're going to raise the bar. Every single year, we're going to introduce new technology. And so our annual rhythm, our incredible technology, leapfrog every single year, every significant leap every single year. And so I think the competition factor is AI useful factor. And I think that that's now been put to rest. It's very clear that the ROI of AI is incredibly good. The token margins are incredibly good. Compute equals revenues, so people need more compute so that they can grow their revenues. There's the question about infrastructure spend and how much investment in CapEx.
Whether it's too much.
Of course, this year, the world very clearly has gone to $1 trillion on its way to $3 trillion towards the end of the decade. I said that about a year ago. Very few people understood it, believe it, but I think most people are starting to understand that in this new AI era, compute is revenues. And to the extent that the CSPs and software companies and technology companies want revenues in their business, they're going to need compute to generate the revenues. And so I think each one of these concerns that were brought up this last year has been very, fairly clearly addressed. And I think that in time, I think people will recognize our position in the marketplace, the value we deliver, and how we're supporting the ecosystem to create this new industry. Everything will get sorted out.
想看最完整的新闻内容，记得下载TVBS 新闻网 APP。